So thanks for being here today. I don't know about where all of you all are coming from, but it is a glorious day outside in the Boston area. So thank you for being indoors on what might be a very nice day otherwise outside to participate in this great webinar. So today we're going to have a conversation with Lowcountry Local First, talking about the responsive evolution of an incubator and apprenticeship program. We'll have Brian Wheat from Lowcountry Local First, and I am Kristen Aldrich with New Entry Sustainable Farming Project to help kind of host and facilitate here. So just quickly before we begin, I want to orient you to the different controls and settings in WebEx. You can adjust your audio controls if you're having any difficulty with that through the audio settings in the upper left-hand corner of your WebEx program. And then if you have questions throughout, there will be parts of the webinar where we'll pause for questions. You can also enter any questions into the chat box, and I'll be checking that and monitoring that throughout. And again, when we pause for questions, that will be a time to enter more questions and we'll address them then. And also want to know, after the webinar, we'll be sharing the recording as well as a link to an evaluation survey and links to other resources as well. But first wanted to give just a very brief overview of New Entry and the national programs. So New Entry Sustainable Farming Project has on-the-ground work that we conduct in Eastern Massachusetts, an Incubator Farm training program, as well as a food hub in CSA. In addition to that, we also house and facilitate national networks of beginning farmer training organizations, being the National Incubator Farm Training Initiative and the Ag Apprenticeship Learning Network. So up here on your screen are just a couple screenshots of our web pages for both of those programs, which have more information, links to resources, and different tools. So these are communities of practice whereby we share information, best practices, and resources to folks operating land-based farmer training programs across the country. So the webinar today will very much incorporate some great lessons learned, an evolution of one example of this kind of program. So we hope that it's valuable and useful to folks kind of coming at this conversation from different angles and different kinds of training programs. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Brian Wheat of Lowcountry Local First.
Thank you so much, Kristen, and welcome to all of you who are joining us today. I am here in sunny Charleston, South Carolina currently, and it's the same story. It's absolutely beautiful outside. So yes, kudos to everyone who has made the choice to join us today. I hope that this will be informative and give you a little bit of insight into our program as it has developed over the years, and maybe you will go away with some insight and ideas about how to be responsive in the forward movement of your programs. Am I set up to be moving through the presentation currently?
Yeah, you should be able to forward the slides.
Okay. Perfect. I don't see that I am.
So if you can flip over to the nifty presentation.
Perfect. There we go. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So as Krista mentioned, my name is Brian Wheat. I'm the Director of Sustainable Agriculture with an organization called Lowcountry Local First. And we have a number of different programs. I'll review a little bit with you what our organization works on, and then we'll get into the specifics of our Growing New Farmers program. So today's objectives are to understand Lowcountry Local First good farming programming, identify strategies for navigating an apprenticeship program, identify the value of third-party evaluations, identify strategies for implementing third-party evaluations, and identify the causation for changes in our, or LLF's, farmer training programs. As an overview, Lowcountry Local First is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to cultivate an economy anchored in local ownership, because we believe local businesses are the foundation of our culture, economy, and character. So we have two branches of our organization, one being good business and the other being good farming. And we've separated those two, understanding holistically that farming is business, but there is a different set of nuanced needs and requirements for that particular industry that just require different means to address those. So our Good Business branch is a member-based organization. We have over 500 business members. We have a co-working space located in downtown Charleston, South Carolina, where we host about 45 different independently owned and operated businesses and provide them low-cost access to office space. We have a Good Business Summit annually where we talk about doing business as a force for good, so looking at triple bottom line practices. And we have monthly networking events to bring independently owned businesses together in the community, support each other. And we also offer commercial space advisory services. So if you're in a business and you're looking to find space to operate your business, we'll help you out. And if you have space and you're looking for tenants, we also help navigate that process as well. My work is in particular related to the Good Farming branch of our organization. And as an organization, we have about or over 300 farmers that we serve in this Lowcountry region that is comprised of about 8 counties in South Carolina on lower southeast coast. We did launch the first farming apprenticeship and incubator farm, which was known as Dirtworks in South Carolina. To date, we've graduated over 169 farming apprentices since 2010. We provide farmer training and networking with a number of different local, regional, statewide, and national organizations as partners. And we also do consumer education and outreach, and that takes the form of one month in April of each year being designated as Eat Local Month, where we do a whole lot of marketing and outreach and consumer engagement around trying to raise awareness of the importance of purchasing and working with local purveyors, farmers, and restaurants. So online, out of all that, we have a business directory that showcases all of the businesses that are members of ours. And so people can go and look online at, I always joke and say, you want cupcakes or a CPA, you can go and look on the business directory and identify a locally owned and operated business that we work with, and it's part of our network. So now on to Good Farming. We do, as I mentioned, consumer education, training, networking, and support. That training arm is particularly what I want to speak to you all today about, and that is the Growing New Farmers program. So that program serves to provide introductory level classroom and hands-on training in farm production and business planning. It is a 6-month program, and we sort of bill it as a shallow dive into all aspects of the business. Our participants experience introductory training, including coursework, field trips, workshops, networking, and regular field days on a 1-acre teaching plot at Middleton Place USDA certified organic farm. So that farm is a host site for us. We do not own and operate that farm. It's owned and operated by Middleton Place Plantation, and it's a small, like I said, 1-acre farm, and they graciously invite us onto their property to do practicum. Our participants, they receive a minimum of 250 training hours and a certificate in sustainable agriculture and continuing education units from the College of Charleston. So it's not a 4-credit program, but it is a certificate program through the continuing ed department in the College of Charleston. And that partnership is recent. We'll talk about the history of our program here in just a moment. In addition to both classroom time, practicum, we also offer an optional apprenticeship placement. And so this is offered with a mentor farmer that provides extended job-based training proven to be invaluable when venturing into the world of small to mid-sized sustainable farming. And that part of the program has changed quite a bit over the years. Furthermore, the Growing New Farmers program, just a few more details for you all. I mentioned it's 6 months. It's curriculum-based. We do regular field trips to local farms, markets, distribution hubs, etc. The purpose of that is really just to encourage people to engage in their network. I think one of the barriers is where do you start for people that are entering into this business, and so we lead them to all the possible pieces and puzzle pieces of that network. We have guest speakers from partnering agencies come in. We do goal-oriented project-based learning experiences, and you may or may not pick up, I'm a former educator in the K-12 realm, so I took some of those skills that I developed there and have transposed them into this program. And really, we're working on real-time and real-life experience-based projects where we sell into our regional and local wholesale markets. We sell into a restaurant that is also on site at Middleton Place. That's the primary outlet for that farm, and so we're doing all the crop planning, doing post-harvest handling, all these types of things for that particular market. And then in addition to that, you'll see later, we do a farm market stand at 2 different farmers markets in this region. We also have that optional apprenticeship and on-the-job training. We also have a business course available through Clemson Agribusiness. Clemson University and their extension program has developed an agribusiness branch, and for those who finished the 6-month program and who are ready to sort of step their business planning up to the next level, we have an 8-week course that they can engage in that will culminate in a business plan being developed and a pitch competition, so to speak. So that's sort of the next scaffolded tier for the participants in this program to prepare themselves. And there is a fee for the program. It's $2,000 in monthly fee payments, and we do have financial aid available, and I can talk about how we determine that in just a little bit. The week at a glance. So Monday nights we have a lecture, classroom-based training focused on curriculum and introductory level content. Wednesdays and Thursdays we go out to Middleton Place for the morning from 8:30 to 12:30, and I'd say we practice what we preach. So whatever we talk about on Mondays, we go out there and we have some kind of practicum. Now the first half of the morning is usually actual farm work. We split into 3 small groups, and someone will work in the harvest group, we have a pack shed group, and then we have a general field work group. And the second half of that day from 10:30 to 12:30, we'll do that practice what we preach portion of the practicum, and typically we'll run that, myself and the farm manager at Middleton Place, or we'll invite other experts in. Just this past week we had someone from Clemson Extension come and do integrated pest management, where we were just doing some sample collection and conversations around that. So we try to, the best we can, actually do what it is we are talking about in class on Monday evenings. The apprenticeship, the days are flexible. We ask that they do a minimum of 8 to 10 hours with their mentor farmer. Some do more. They can be matched, and we'll talk about that as well, with potential mentors to provide on-the-job training on a working farm. This matching is targeted to meet the market and production-specific interest of each candidate, and they're limited based on availability. We have about 20 different businesses that we work with, and we really try to ask the right questions of our potential participants so that we can determine who might be the best match for them. And we have, as I've mentioned, been doing this since 2010, so we have some really great relationships with these mentors and have a good understanding of the types of individuals they might want to work with and the experience that they would be offering. And so we try to shape that for someone coming into the program for the first time. I mentioned since 2010 we've trained over 165 new farmers. It's 169, depending on a couple of the criteria for graduation that we look at. And this is just a statement from someone from last year, and I really think this is a wonderful reflection on her experience. And I know that if you're all running programs, you have these moments, I think, peppered throughout your program, and it really kind of helps keep us going. But she came into this and gained a great deal of confidence from this, and she's now running 1 wild acre flower farm. So I think, you know, we've seen this program really grow a great network of farmers, food systems leaders, and food systems related businesses. So in order to do that, we have to be responsive, and we have to pay attention to the needs and the work that we're doing throughout. So we'll get into that a little bit here in just a moment. I mentioned history, so I think now is a good time. I'd like to see, or sort of poll the group if we could, and see who out there is running an incubator farm currently. Is that something that you can do for us, Kristen?
Yes, I had myself muted, but yes, I can set up a poll here.
We just like to keep the convo going throughout this, and so we're going to engage you all with a couple of polls, just simple yes or no questions, so that I can get a picture of the audience and hopefully tailor this a little bit to your needs as well.
Okay, so you should see a poll available now, so we'll just give a little time for people to respond. It looks pretty...
Simple yes or no questions. Do you run an incubator farm? And that's if you click top right of your the event center, you'll see that poll question. If you're able to do that, that's very much appreciated. It helps give me an idea of who I'm speaking with today, because this is a very different setup than the normal conference when I could see everyone. So I appreciate you filling that out if you're able to.
Looks pretty split. I'll go ahead and close the poll here. Just a few more seconds and we'll...
Okay, thank you.
Close that.
So while we're waiting to hear the results on that, I'll speak a little bit about the history of our program and how it has developed over the years, various changes we've made. So the program started in 2010. At that time, we had only 3 full-time apprentices, and we had 4 mentor farms, so someone split themselves between 2 farms. And so it does look like that we're pretty split here. 43% of the group is running an incubator farm, excellent, and 39% are not, so that's good to know. We'll talk a little bit about our incubator farm and some of the details of that and maybe some changes that we've made and why. So in 2010, again, they were paid $500 a month, say they were paid a stipend to work with their farm, and there was an 8-week class in sustainable agriculture that was a little bit more spread out and sort of boiled down than the current course we offer. We also had a 10-week business planning course, and then we also were running an online market at that time. Along came 2011, and we established a partnership with Clemson University on one of their beginning farmer and rancher development program grants. At that time, we had 6 mentor farms, and we increased our number of participants to 19. We had stipends for mentors and apprentices through that grant, and there were 2 separate seasons for the apprenticeship as well, a spring and a fall season. We were also offering an entrepreneurship course through Clemson. They have a program, it's a packaged curriculum called Next Level that is, they have food systems business planning, and then they also have agribusiness planning as well, and those are still out there and used. We also had rotating site visits as well, where we would take the apprentices to various farms and do tours with them, sort of based on the craft model. In 2012, we launched our incubator farm. I'll go into the details of that in just a moment. We had 35 apprentices through those 2 seasons, and there were 12 mentor farms that we were working with. We eliminated the business planning classes. There was not a lot of engagement with those. The participation was a little bit too low for us to justify continuing to offer that, and the reflection on that was just that people weren't ready to enter into that phase in their business development. We were continuing to do growers groups as well, I mentioned, based on that craft model. So the incubator farm, this is a shot of the number of individuals. There's a farm manager in there and a teaching plot manager as well, but Most of these folks were incubees, Chris and I were joking earlier about that term. I'm going to go with it. I think it's a good one. So the way the incubator farm looked, here's a lot of text, but this is part of the outreach materials that we had. So we had 1.5 acres of arable land with mainline irrigation for up to 3 years for these folks. We provided business and production support with a full-time farm manager, and then another team of an attorney, someone who worked in design and marketing, and a CPA to have regular meetings with them and help to develop their business. We gave them a packing facility that was modeled around GAP certifiable pack sheds. It was not GAP certified itself, but it was modeled in that fashion. And a walk-in cooler. We provided them with access to a tractor with a front loader, a few various implements, and there was a tool storage as well, a shipping container. We had 2 wells. We had a greenhouse. We had restroom facilities. We gave them a membership to the organization so they could engage in all those other benefits. And we gave them access to our monthly good farming workshops. There's a greenhouse repeated in there. And then the cost to do that was $2,000 a year. Other requirements there, where would they sell their produce? They were responsible for securing their own market outlets, restaurants, wholesale, etc. And the staff would provide introductions when possible. The application process required a completed business plan to be attached with a crop plan, marketing outlets, and financials included. And they needed to have proof of cash flow to launch their business, and it was expected to be typically around $3,000 to $5,000 as a minimum. So we had, as you'll see here as we go through, we had 3 incubees that were there for the 3-year term, and then a little bit more time than that. As we went into 2013 after we launched, that was the end year of the USDA Clemson grant. Apprentices were assigned plots on the incubator farm, small plots. I believe they were about 1/8 of an acre. We had 19 apprentices. We had 11 mentor farms, so that number decreased. And we had those 3 incubees who were running their business. So it was a combination teaching plot for the Growing New Farmers program and broken out 1.5 acre plots for these 3 businesses. In 2014, because the USDA grant had come to term, we were no longer able to offer the program and staff the program without charging a fee for the program. So we introduced a fee for people to participate in Growing New Farmers program. There were 10 mentors that year, and then we also had 3 incubees continuing to work on DirtWorks Incubator Farm. 2015 was the first year that we partnered with the College of Charleston to offer that certificate. We had 12 mentors. We had 24 participants that year. That was our largest number so far. The program was expanded into being a 6-month program, and we had to provide curriculum and a framework for that to be in partnership with the College of Charleston. We also introduced for the first time third-party program evaluations. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And that was the last year for our 3 incubees to be participating in their 3-year term on the incubator farm. So in that year, because we did not have enough participants to occupy all the space that was available, we took to offering micro incubation plots. So the hope was that people who were in the program would be interested in managing a 1/4 acre plot. So we subdivided one of the incubator plots into 1/4 acre sections and offered that up. And we had minimal interest in that. And there are some reflections on that that I definitely want to share with you all. Come 2016, we had 13 mentor farms, 16 participants. We dissolved the DirtWorks Incubator Farm, and we transitioned to Middleton Place as our teaching plot. The 3 incubators who were there began transition in the land matching process. So the idea was that after 3 years of incubating on our property, we would navigate the land matching process for them. And so we did assist them after the incubator farm dissolved in locating new places to continue their farm business. And the 3 people who were there are currently farming on leased land in different properties. One of those farmers stayed on the incubator farm property and expanded his operation. So we felt it was very important for us to be able to help continue that process for those individuals. But the reason and justification behind the dissolution of the incubator farm was we had less interest than we thought we would, and less applications than we thought we would to occupy that space when those incubator farmers transitioned off. We had one qualified applicant, and then a few other applicants who had less than the qualifications, and we had 3 full-time staff managing that program, and it just was not sustainable for us to do that. And so we then basically moved off of that property, helped that one farmer expand on that property, and realized that, you know, if we wanted to have qualified applicants for a situation like this or an opportunity like this, they needed to have more experience, and they needed to have more guided experience and more of an opportunity to get that experience in businesses that match their needs. So we switched our focus to the apprenticeship program and maintained relationships with a couple of those mentor farmers that we work with who had offered the option to incubate someone on an individual basis. So rather than running a program and hosting a program and all the staff that's involved in doing that, we said, let's respond to the demand. If we get people through this apprenticeship program who have the experience necessary, and we have very close ties with them because we're seeing them for 6 months, seeing them through the business planning course, hopefully, we can help sort of tailor a continued experience for them on an individual basis rather than just having this program available and waiting for the right person to come along, so to speak. So then 2017 happened. We had 22 graduates that year. We have 18 mentor farms. We really increased the number of mentor farmers available. We saw a sort of gap in providing experiences for those people who were going through our program who weren't going to farm. I've seen that happen in our program. I've seen it happen in other programs. And a lot of programs see that as a negative thing. And I've shifted my frame of thought to seeing that as a positive thing and identifying ways to support those individuals. So now we have opened up the apprenticeship experience to other peripheral businesses. So someone comes into the program and they're really interested in, social justice, and our typical mentor farmer may not be engaging in those types of activities or providing any kind of service in that realm, but we do have other businesses in the area that are really closely linked to the local and regional food system and support farmers and support consumers, et cetera. And so we help walk them through that experience while getting training in sustainable agriculture. So we're putting, educated and informed leaders into the local food system in all aspects that we could. I also integrated those project-based learning experiences in there, and we also re-established the business planning course. This year we have 24 participants, 14 mentors, and 17 apprentices. So we've increased the number of participants, and we've increased the number of apprentices that we have each year. Another thing that we did this year is to improve our project-based experiences, we worked our way into 2 farmers markets so that participants navigate and run 2 farm market stands. So that's a lot. I'm going to take a moment. Ooh, here's a picture. This is the 2012 group. We have one person in there who is a mentor farm and one person in there, 2, 3 people in there who are working as food systems leaders. So that was a very small group at that time. And then this is the group, half the group, I should say, from 2017. We split it into 2 days, so we could only get them together, the groups together, to take 2 separate pictures. So, but it's improved, it's grown immensely, and we're constantly responding. So I want to take a moment now to open up for any questions you might have, just to sort of break up the flow a little bit. And, you know, are there questions about our organization, things I've covered thus far, the history of the program? Happy to take just a couple minutes here to answer those. Let's see.
Yeah. We had a number of questions come through, a handful from Jeff. Thank you for your patience waiting to get to the questions section here.
Oh, my goodness, yeah, I see tons of them now. So, okay.
Do you see them all, Brian, or do you want me to walk through them? Okay.
So the question, how do you define a local? So the organization serves 8 counties in the Lowcountry. So we would define it via that, or as that. If you're in one of those counties, that would count. And that fee the question is that $2,000 a month or $2,000 total? It's $2,000 total. How important is organic certified as an ideal sustainable farm? Do you teach organic certification process, et cetera? Our market doesn't demand organic certification down here. We have 4 organic certified farms in Charleston County alone, and 2 of those are research facilities through Clemson and the USDA Vegetable Lab. So the market really doesn't demand it down here, but all of our producers are practicing organic practices and growing sustainably. I do think, however, that there is some catching up for us to do, and so I think that it is a benefit that we are able to host our class on a USDA certified organic farm. So we do train to those standards, and also just reiterate that those standards are not just necessary for being certified, but are also best practices. So we don't encourage one way or the other, but we have that as a resource, and that is an option and available. Have you done evaluation of graduates in terms of succeeded running their own business? Yes, we do. We have an alumni program. So we keep a listserv, and every year we rotate in 2 new co-chairs for the alumni group. And we have quarterly get-togethers with them, and they are responsible for doing tracking. So that has been a real challenge for us, and that is one response that we are taking on right now, is really getting a good cross-sectional look at who's doing what. I didn't pull those numbers for today. I apologize for not doing that, but we are basically just keeping in individual contact with people and asking them what they're up to. I'll review some of that in a couple of later slides, just looking at sort of the multiplier effect of the work that we do. How much to need to pay mentor farmers to get them to participate? Is it hard to get them? So we currently are not paying mentor farmers. I have recently, we recently resubmitted a grant so that we are able to do that. That's a big reflection from a number of programs that are out there that's necessary. We do try to provide them as many benefits as possible. We'll talk about how we manage that relationship in a little bit. Is it hard to get mentor farmers? I would say it's hard to manage the relationships, or challenging to manage the relationships, but finding people who are interested in helping others and taking on an apprentice is not as hard as you might think. But it only comes with having established relationships in the community in general. I would say that it would be difficult to start right off the bat if you don't have any relationships built. So that would be key in moving towards that. $3,000 or $5,000 cash flow. That's a great question. Those requirements came on before I was with the organization. So I'm going to do my best to answer that question. I can ask somebody here really quickly. What scale, size farm do you understand to be a minimum to sustain your farm in your local area? That's a difficult question to answer. It really varies on the business plan, the market that you are entering into, a number of different factors there. The farmers that we work with are pretty small acreage, meaning they're typically less than 10 acres. We do have a couple of mentor farmers that are working with 40 plus acres, and yeah, to run that, there's a wide spectrum of farms here, and to be successful or not really is dependent upon what your markets are, what your products are, your business plan. How are those peripheral businesses experience structured internship? I'll share that in a moment. What's the difference between a participant and an apprentice? A participant is someone who's taking the curriculum-based and practical experience-based course. An apprentice is someone who opts in to work with another business. Is the current new business course provided by other service providers or by staff? That will be through Clemson Extension Agribusiness. How do you vet your mentor farmers? We'll talk about that in a little bit. What's the relationship with Middleton Place? Do they do the teaching, or is it just using the space? So Jamie, the farm manager there, has become somewhat of a co-teacher, and I work with her pretty extensively to plan those experiences, but it is not their responsibility to do that. It is my responsibility to manage the program and deliver the materials. This is a question from Celeste. How do you organize the beginning stages of your apprenticeship? Is it a great idea and we're thinking about starting one? We'll talk about that in just a minute. And our apprentice hours, paid hours. That's a great question. It is expected that the farmers pay them at least minimum wage, but encourage they pay them a living wage down here, and we help them to determine what that may be. How many hours per month? Well, I'd have to do some math, but it's at the very minimum 8 to 10 hours a week, so it'd be 40 hours a month on average. Excellent. So those are a lot of awesome questions. I hope to address some of them that I skimmed over here in the next section of the presentation, and keep them coming. I think this is great.
Brian?
Yes.
Brian, sorry. I think one other question came through, and apologies if you addressed this already, but one person asked, will you speak about the type of support you provide to mentor farmers? Curious how you ensure that each mentoring experience is up to your quality requirements.
Yes, I will. Definitely. I'm about to enter into the apprenticeship section of the conversation, so we'll talk about how we navigate that whole process. And if I don't answer that question, please chime back in and remind me. So we'll move forward now with the apprenticeship. So the apprenticeship, we do the matching. And we facilitate that matching process through looking at the specific questions that we ask the apprentices or potential participants during the application process. We have the mentor farmers fill out an application as well. I'll share the types of questions that we ask them with you in just a moment and some of the other things we consider. But we go through as a team. I work with Jamie, the farm manager at Middleton Place, and one of our staff members here who's very familiar with the farmers, and look at the needs that the participants share, some of the criteria for their work experience, and compare that with the offerings of a mentor farmer. And then we match them up. So we provide an introduction and some resources to help them begin that process, and then do a check-in with them to see if that's the right match, and then would solidify that match and move forward. So I mentioned we screen applicants based on experience, interest, and availability. We then pair them with the mentor. We provide goal setting and check-ins, and then the farmers are required to pay at least minimum wage. We encourage them to pay somewhere between $10 and $15 an hour if they're able to do so. I'll also say that under the construct of this this work experience framework, nonprofit organizations are not required to pay. So I just wanted to take a couple of formal definitions of what an apprentice and a mentor are, to sort of answer that question before about, how are we making sure they're living up to our standards. So I want to keep in mind all the time that a mentor is an experienced and trusted person, and I don't keep this in mind necessarily, but this is a definition, and I keep this idea in mind, who gives another person advice and help, especially related to work or school over a period of time. So our mentor farmers are expected to not just be employers, and we really do all that we can to reinforce that and select people who are going to be available to fit this role. And on the flip side, an apprentice is one who's learning by practical experience under skilled workers in trade, art, or calling. So we want to encourage them to have an experience and help guide them through an experience that is not just an employee experience. I'll share how we do that. Should look like this. Hopefully somewhere out there you all are laughing. We remember this great mentor-apprentice experience, but instead it looks a little bit like this. This is a group of photos of our mentors and apprentices during the year 2016, actually, as a matter of fact. This is that group from 2016. So they're all smiling, they're all having a good time, and they're enjoying their experiences with each other. And I think that's one thing to remember during this. People should be enjoying themselves. So through some of our evaluations, I just want to share what our mentors think is most important. And they value most making new connections. And this is not, I should say, this is through our third-party evaluation. I'll share how we do that later, but this is, actually a longitudinal collection of reflections on what mentors value from year to year. So these are the common threads. They also value having labor, making an impact, and helping people. Our apprentices value the hands-on experience. They value their feedback from their mentors. They value goal setting and check-ins. They value the network that's established, and they also value that they feel like they're helping genuinely. So some of the challenges that come along with this are that farmers are dealing with unskilled labor, and apprentices are unskilled labor. So that's challenging for both parties. Another thing that's really difficult is real teaching happening. So how do I make sure that a mentor is really teaching someone and not just telling them to go weed or to go harvest the kale and leaving them alone? And let's be clear here, that happens a lot, and it has happened a lot. So I try to build in parts of the program that mitigate that to the best of our ability. Sometimes you can get personality clashes. Sometimes, oftentimes, more than not, there are scheduling conflicts. A lot of our participants are doing this with other full-time jobs, and their schedules can be really difficult to navigate. Sometimes farmers will perceive that they're helping out their competition. And my response to that is always, your competition really isn't another small-scale sustainable farmer or market farmer in this region. It's larger entities that are pushing out small farmers altogether. And I oftentimes will reflect back on the whole rising tide floats all boats approach. We've seen the network grow quite a bit. There is a wide open market for locally grown, sustainably produced food of all kinds here in our Charleston area, which is a very food-centric, foodie-centric food and beverage culture. So there's a wide open market, and so I just try to remind them that they are helping someone else to help the greater food system, and that it's going to benefit everybody in the end. And then oftentimes having the resources available to take on an apprentice can be a challenge as well. how do we pick mentors? I've been here long enough that we have relationships with a lot of the farmers already, and so when new farmers come on, what I'll do is I'll go visit them at their farm, or I'll give them a shout and say, hey, when can I meet up with you, and go see them at the farmer's market and just start the conversation. But initially, we would go to farmers markets, go to conferences, and just meet the people who are out there farming currently and doing it successfully. And having materials to share with them about the program, I think, is very important, because oftentimes you get just one first impression, and you get one time to connect with these people. So having something to share with them, I'll show you what we have in just a little bit. Having something to share with them about the program and then following up is very important. And then I also cannot stress enough having a site visit. I was struggling to find an apprentice, a placement last year, as a matter of fact. And I knew this farmer just through conversation, and I linked them up, and I did not go out and visit their farm because it was really close to the start date. And I just trusted the relationship I had with that farmer, and their place was a disaster. And it flopped. The person came back to me, the apprentice came back and said, I mean, this is just, I can't do this. So I can't stress enough doing a site visit. I knew better than to not do that, but I did it anyways. So definitely something to consider. Let's see, I'm trying to keep up with questions here. The number of hours that came up, a problem is matching a mentor's location. Is the location of mentor farms an issue for placement? Absolutely. There are a number of farms that are not within reach of the farm. There is one particular farmer who I think is just a dynamite, outstanding mentor, too, in fact, that I've been unable to place someone with because of their location. And I think that takes also a change in culture as well. We're very sort of set in our ways here, and everybody wants to travel a half an hour from Johns Island to the downtown Charleston market and live that close proximity life here as a farmer. And when we look at other food systems and food sheds in other regions, we have people traveling a good distance to get to their markets, et cetera. And so I'm sort of trying to help change people's perspectives about where and how they're willing to travel to be able to do this business. And then that also can feed the perception on where they can identify available and affordable land, because that's disappearing as well. So I think that a culture shift around what people are willing to do and where they're willing to take themselves is necessary to some degree.
And Brian, we got a couple questions through the chat box as well. Okay. There's one, have any of your mentor farms decided to start their own mentoring program, or do they prefer for you to facilitate the program on their behalf, and why?
We actually have one farm that, got an apprentice one year, hired her as her farm manager, and they don't mentor with us anymore. And they're trying to run their own training program. So not to say that it hasn't happened, but I do think that the reason that it's not happening all the time is that we're taking some of the burden away by giving these participants some background knowledge that a lot of people who come to this as an intern or a woofer or an apprentice may not have. And we're also streamlining the process of identifying and finding quality employees. And so that is a relief to our farmers. I get calls in the beginning of the season, hey, I need somebody. You got somebody for me yet? So I think that they're not doing that because we help eliminate some of the burden for them. And we also have a great network that we're sharing with, and so the relationship is strong. That is also to say, though, that some of our farmers take an apprentice through our program, and they'll take another apprentice through, let's say, the woofing program as well. So we've had that happen as well. What are the other questions?
Yeah, one other, I think you may have touched on this previously, but from a program management perspective, how do you at least try to assure the experience is educational and not just free labor? And then challenges like real teaching habits.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm gonna get right into that.
Great.
So I mentioned Collateral having something to share with mentor farmers. And I also, to reflect on that question, there's no guarantee, and that's a constant struggle for us. And so you're never going to assure yourself that that's happening. All you can really do is minimize the opportunity for it to not happen, I think is important to realize. Just as a side note. But so we have Collateral that we share with farmers to start that process, to start the process of really making sure that someone is going to be a mentor for someone and not just hiring someone. And another way we ensure that is we have dropped farmers that have not provided that experience in the past, really great farmers. And I think it's important to be strong enough in your purpose and mission and convictions about the experience that you're going to provide to be able to have that conversation with someone who's a farmer and just recognize that it's not the best fit. So we share this, just a one-sheeter that says what an apprentice is and what a mentor is, and then what the mentor farmer may have to do. And on the back side of that, we sort of gleaned this from this document that the New England Small Farm Institute put out, the On-Farm Mentors Guide, which if you are running an apprenticeship or considering an apprenticeship, it's a great resource that you can purchase, or some of it's available online. But we have them answer this question. It doesn't have to get submitted back to us. It doesn't have to, go anywhere. But it's just another tool for them to think about: are they really interested in taking on an apprentice and being a mentor? So do they need labor on their farm? Do they like to work with others? Do they like to teach? Do they want to help create educated consumers? Did they have a good apprentice experience and want to share the same for others? Do they want to share their love for farming with others? Do they want to help train a new generation of farmers? Do they like having new blood on the farm? Do they want to spend time with others who enjoy farming? And I think that, just a high score in this evaluation can tend to give you an idea that somebody might be ready to be a mentor. And I would say a lower score in this would mean that maybe this person is an independent farmer and just another great cog in the food system, but maybe not going to be providing mentorship. So in linking mentors and apprentices, we have each one of them fill out an application. We have a mentor orientation at the beginning of the year, and that takes the shape of an appreciation dinner, or lunch rather, and then we'll bring new mentors in and have an orientation for them. We also create mentor profiles. So in the very beginning, I share those mentor profiles with the apprentices, and those help to give a picture of what that farm experience might be like, and it has some specific questions on it that I'll share with you in just a second. I provide them an initial meeting checklist, so what questions to talk about when they do get together for their working interview. So their first meeting is a working interview. They're encouraged to go and spend a normal day or a period of time that they may spend. It could be 2 hours, it could be half a day, it could be a whole day, but spend that time with the farmer. And then also we have a set of documentation that we need to have them fill out, a mentor agreement, waivers. We do require that they have at least $1 million liability insurance, and that they get a copy of that to us. And then we do goal setting and check-ins, and that's another story that I'll get to eventually. But that's the flow of the process, so to speak. Here are some details. With the applications, we want to be sure to ask the right questions. We want to make sure that we're going to collect all the information once, because this population is very difficult to track down for this type of information. If you have everybody together in this one orientation, get it all taken care of there. We want to leave plenty of advance time for completion of that stuff. It's difficult to do with a couple weeks before the program. We want to make sure we have all that information online and available very early on. And I also try to, if I can't get this out via email, try to do it at the site visit with the farmer. This is another case where, if you have somebody's time, make sure you're using that time really wisely. Some of the questions that we ask on the application of our mentor farmers: what is the preferred mode of contact? What is their philosophy? Why would they decide to mentor? So just a brief explanation on that. We ask them to agree to meet with our staff for our check-ins, and I think it's powerful to have like an actual box to check that says they agree to do that, and we do have that in our application, so that they're conscious that they've made that commitment. We ask for their types of production. What are their markets? What are they growing? What is their acreage? We ask them what they're comfortable teaching. So we have a list of the curricular content that we address, and we have them check boxes of things that they're comfortable teaching. We also do the same for things that they're not comfortable teaching. We ask them what their schedule is, what their preferred schedule is for an apprentice. And we have a series of questions where they rate their work experience on the level of each one of these 4 things that they like in their work experience. So 1 to 5, do you prefer little supervision or a lot of, or are you going to provide little supervision or a lot of supervision? Do you prefer a little structure or a lot of structure? Sociability, do you prefer a little sociability or a lot of sociability? And then pace, are you working nice and slowly, or do you like the hustle? So we ask the same questions of our participants as well, and so that's part of the cross-sectional look at how we're going to match people. We don't want to match someone who's highly social with someone who's not highly social. That has happened before, and someone who wants to be at peace and in their zone on the farm, working with an apprentice who's just sort of chatting all day long is not going to be favorable for them. So we try to eliminate any of these areas of conflict that may come up before we even do the match. We also ask the mentor farmer how they heard about the program. It's important for us later on when we do outreach to know, where our most successful outlets. These are just a few of the questions. There are a number of other questions, but I think these are the most important ones that we have on that application. I mentioned having a farmer mentor meeting. We host it at a restaurant. We host it at lunchtime. We give them lunch and try to just bring everybody together. It's really rare that we get all these people together at one place at one time, so it's a great experience. This helps us to keep that relationship going. It helps to take care of any paperwork we need to get taken care of. It also gives us an opportunity to survey them and see if there are any additional changes they recommend we make. It's a good experience. This is somehow this got funky, but this is a copy of our mentor profiles that we share with our participants. We also provide this as a resource for the mentor farmers to use anywhere they'd like to, so I think it's a powerful tool. Basically, contact information, all their social media, general information. Additional questions are, how did you get into this business? What type of experience could an apprentice expect with you? Let's see, what are the other questions there? It's so hard for me to read this, I'm sorry. I'll be sure that when we send this presentation out later that this is fixed for you all. But this is a recent tool that we've developed, and I think it's great. And then we share all of the mentor profiles with all of the participants later on, so that they know who their network is and who the people that they can turn to after the program for questions and further networking. This is a copy of the guidelines for initial mentor meeting that we have. Just a checklist. It's basically like an interview checklist, and it's overkill to some degree. The farmers joke with me about it. There's a question on there as whether or not they have access to living arrangements and if they have a pool or a jacuzzi. So it's overkill, but I let them know that they can pick and choose from this document any questions. It's just a guideline for them, somewhere to start in case they get together and they're not quite sure what questions to ask each other. How are we doing on questions, Kristen?
I don't see any that have come through recently.
Okay, great. I'll keep rolling then. Cool. Now, I mentioned the goal setting and check-ins. So once we have the match, once we have had their working interview, and they come back to us and they say, this is going to be great, we're ready to start, I help the apprentices create goals on their own. I used to do it and have them do it with their mentor farmer, but they don't know their mentor farmer very well yet. They don't know their mentor farmer's operation, so they're very timid, and it's been reflected in our evaluations that experience did not go well. So I have them set their own goals in class alone, and I use a SMART goal model. There are all kinds of different models out there, but what that acronym stands for is specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time-based. I try to have them create measurable goals and a timeline for that, and goals that are agreed upon between themselves and their mentor so that we can track them. On the right, you see an example from some initial goals, the first set of goals that they created with their mentor farm experience in 2016. So inevitably, that process is very vague and just kind of a little awkward for apprentices in the very beginning. I recognize that, I know that. They don't know that that's just fine. I still encourage them to do that. It's more about beginning that process and beginning the frame of thought around actually setting goals and articulating them. Later, what we'll do is we take that goals agreement and we bring it to okay, so this is sort of what I just shared. But we bring it to their mentor for our first check-in. And I try to do a first check-in 2 weeks after they start their apprenticeship. And to back it up also, I want to share, I start the class, I think we started on March 5th this year, and I used to start the apprenticeship at the same time, but now I'm waiting 2 weeks before I even do matching so that I can get to know those participants and I can have conversations with them. And also anyone who, they always agree to do this and then don't realize what they've agreed to do. And so that kind of helps give 2 weeks to weed out anybody who really wasn't paying attention in the beginning. So then 2 weeks after the start of the class, we do matching. And then 2 weeks after matching, we start to do our check-ins. And we review those goals, and we hone them, and we make them more measurable, and we set real deadlines for them. And then we have a mid-season check-in that happens in June, and then we have our final evaluations at the close of the program in August. This part here, where we review together during check-ins, is invaluable. The goals are set, all the mentors know what they should be doing, all the apprentices know what they should be doing, but without a touch point, without somebody actually sitting down with them, they're going to just do business. So by me coming out there and sitting down and reading through this for, you can make it as long as you want, typically it takes us about an hour, but by me doing that, I'm making this experience of the goal setting real for both parties and holding people accountable, letting them know I'm coming back and we're going to check on whether or not these goals have been met. And that's really valuable. It puts those ideas into action. The question, how often are check-ins? We do 3. So we'll do our initial check-in, we'll do our mid-season check-in, and then the final check-in is our evaluation. And typically that's 2 in person and then one not in person evaluation. And it's very difficult to do that. I have a part-time staff person that goes with me and helps to do that. We go together on the first meeting, and then the mid-season check-in we're going to divide and conquer. Yes, the apprentice and the mentor are there at the same time. The question was, do you do the check-ins with apprentices and mentors at the same time? The experience is that apprentices don't want to be honest in front of a mentor that hasn't been doing very well. So we do the check-in together. I have separate check-ins with apprentices during class. So we'll pull aside a few at a time, and I'll talk to them about their experience on a private type basis. And I have an open line of communication with the mentor farmers, and they call me or text me regularly about what's going on. So I try to do a little bit of both. I think having everybody together helps with that accountability piece and helps to make the goal setting process real for them, and lets them know that the program is here, basically, and reminds them of that. Then we set them free, so to speak, maintaining contact and sharing class progress, check-ins. I encourage them, both the apprentice and mentors, to do farm walks, take time for questions, to try a little bit of everything on the farm, to visit other farms and markets. And I also reinforce that conflict resolution begins with communication. And this is all set out in our initial documentation that we share with them. As far as the check-ins are concerned, we talked a little bit about that, but it's on-site preferred. I make them as informal as possible. We just talk about the goals. We'll look at the goals, talk about what's happening at the farm. Have those goals been met? How can we change them to make them more specific and measurable, and what's realistic for the experience? Reviewing that goals document and then streamlining those goals. I also put in there, I mentioned that I like the apprentice to lead the tour of the farm, to let me know what they've been doing, and to walk me around that place. I think it is powerful to encourage and support an apprentice to be able to be an advocate for their mentor, and an advocate for the program at the same time. So I provide as many opportunities for them to represent that business and our program as possible. On a side note, at the beginning of every class, I have them all do an elevator pitch for their farm. I'll go through 4 random names at the beginning of the class and rotate through everyone, and once everyone's gone once, we repeat that process ongoing through the program so that they can become comfortable representing the business they're working with. So this is sort of a spot to do questions about the apprentice program and how we navigate that. It's tough to do such a brief overview of it, but I hope I covered quite a bit for you all.
Brian, just a couple other questions came through.
Yeah.
What is the duration of the mentorship? Does it match the season of the farmer, or is it a set timeline, such as summer months?
The duration of the mentorship goes through the duration of the program, and we've changed that over the years based on our evaluations. So we're slowly, as much as we can, moving the start of the program back a little bit to match the seasons. Originally, we had to match the college season because the college supported us, so we had to do it when session got out. And it's just not practical for farmers to have people at those times. So I encourage the college to understand that, and so we've been slowly moving the program to match the farmers' needs more so.
Great. And then how many staff people administer this program?
So Lowcountry Local First has a staff of, I believe, 8 currently, but that's the greater organization. The individuals who run this program would be myself. We have a program coordinator who works 15 hours a week, and we have an intern every semester. So it's 3 of us that are working on it, and then I would also count Jamie, the farm manager at Middleton Place, but her responsibility really is only to be there and to maintain the farm and to co-teach the classes. And so the question is, the coursework is taught by me. This is a question from Anne. Weekly meeting. I teach areas where I feel like I have the level of expertise. required to be able to do so, and where I don't, I bring in community regional partners. And moreover, the classes are taught by those folks. And the purpose of that is also to, to have an expert talking about the topics, but also to introduce them to their network as well. So it's a lot of community partners. Clemson Extension is very active with us as well. And yeah, so it's not just me teaching the classes. I hope that answers that question. The business planning program is going to be the same way. Clemson Extension Agribusiness is going to run that, and then they're going to bring in community members to teach the class. And so that's very management intensive, and that's why we hired a part-time person to help with that. Other questions at all?
I don't see any other questions coming in at the moment.
I hope I addressed that question about assuring the experience is educational and not just free labor, some of the things that we do. I hope that was addressed in that last part of the program. Now I'm going to move forward and talk about our third-party evaluations and just how we navigate those, some of the things that those entail, and the changes that we've made based on those evaluations. So we started, I mentioned, in 2015 doing third-party evaluations, and every year we have a State of the Program report that's produced, and this is what they look like. They're about 30 pages, and we, in the past, have had master's students with the College of Charleston from the Masters in Public Health program who are sort of focusing on doing work in this type of data collection work with us. And they created, that was a master's project that actually created this framework, and then we've applied that framework through other third-party evaluators in the subsequent years. So what do those consist of? They are in-person interviews with every single one of the participants. So we schedule a couple of weeks in advance, 20-minute to 30-minute conversations with the participants. That's participants and apprentices. And it's done by someone else who's not related to the program. And they're recorded and transcribed and later reviewed and sifted through for commonalities. We also do online surveys. So we send an online survey to our mentors, asking them about their experience. We do phone interviews with the mentors, so we get them on the line and do the same type of thing. I also should mention in there, we do a pre and post skills assessment as well that's integrated into this third-party evaluation. So what do you know before the program? What do you know after the program? And we broke that into 14 core content areas, and there are sub-headings of each one of those content areas, and we ask them to rate their understanding of certain topics. We also have a separate section of questions for those who are apprenticing. Whoever's doing this third-party evaluation will then take all that information, sift it out, and prepare that State of the Program report. And so some of the types of info that we get from it just include people's general perception of the program. Did it meet their goals? What are their plans after the program? You can see in this sort of side photo here some of the key points that we take away. Let's see. We tried to gauge on an annual basis whether or not the certificate of sustainable agriculture is valuable, because we do pay the college to do that, so we want to make sure that's a high point. And then that document stays with us. It's shared with the entire staff. We use that. I can't tell you how many different things we use that for. We use it in a big way for our outreach. We use it to create a concise one-page summary of the year to send to all of our sponsors and donors, along with some other items. we use that, most importantly, to propose changes to the program. So much of what we have done and changes that we have been made, if not all of what we've done and changes that have been made, come from these evaluations. And I will say that the third party doing this, one of the values is that people are very honest. So the question about honesty before is I think, very important. Knowing that they're talking to someone who doesn't know the program and who is going to make this information anonymous later on, actually really get some interesting ideas out of the woodwork and some real thoughts about how to make this better. I've had to read through some things that have been difficult for me to not take personally, but I've been able to respond to those because of that, because that information has come up, and I think it's very valuable. One thing that's been important is to maintain consistency. So, asking the same questions every year and boiling down the data in the same way every year, so that we can look at longitudinal evaluation of this program as well to see how successful it's been. After we have this information, I do a staff debrief where we go through and we talk about any changes that might be made, and I make sure that all of our staff knows exactly what the reflections on the program were for this year, so that we can all collaborate on making changes as we move forward. A couple of questions come down the line here. How detailed do you find your classes to be, the complexity, and do you find big differences in skill levels of new classes of apprentices? So our classes, because we have such a short period of time to cover a breadth of information, and we have built this as a shallow dive into all concepts related to sustainable ag business development, I would say they're 101 into these classes, or into these concepts. The varying level of skills that we see is high. We have mostly, though, people who know very little about sustainable agriculture, down to, I can't think of examples, but the knowledge base of some of these individuals that are coming into this is very low, despite them thinking otherwise. And I think that this program is a great example of a reality check for a lot of people who maybe have worked in the past, or maybe have interned for a summer on a farm somewhere, or maybe grew up farming and then went to college somewhere and are inheriting their family land. It's the level of understanding of the reality of the farm business is low. What's the cost associated with working with a third party in this case? In the past, we've managed it to not cost anything, but this year, recognizing the value, we put it into our budget. I think we put $500 into our budget for that. So it's not a lot. We work with organizations that are working with students who are working on this and offer these services, and there may be something like that in your area. Yes, it's through the Riley Center, Joseph P. Riley Center for Community Development. So, or the Masters in Public Health program is who we've used in the past. And since we already have the framework for it, it's really sort of easy to plug someone into this. We actually, one of our interns did it the previous year because we have all that information collected as far as formulas and spreadsheets to do statistical analysis, standard deviation, all that type of stuff. So it's all there.
And Brian, one more question came through. Do you find it's easier or harder to find funding to support this program versus the Incubator program, and why?
That's a great question. Kind of leads me to my next thoughts. I have found, well, it's sort of a larger question. We're sort of on the tail end of a lot of big funding pushes for similar programming, and we're seeing, or I'm seeing anyways, that people want to see a more comprehensive impact. And so I believe that this is easier for us to sell because of that. It's also a little bit easier for us to sell because without a really solid base of applicants and participants in an incubator farm, it's difficult for you to show the impact that you're having, and it's difficult to make that impact. So my hope overall in this is that we're preparing people for that interim stage in their development in their business where they're very green, they haven't had experience enough to take on an independent business or independent experience on an incubator farm, and giving them experience to build their confidence in doing that, and also build their network to be able to get further experience if they need to be able to do that. So we're hoping this is the kind of link that fills the gap of unqualified applicants for incubator farms in this area. So yeah, easier to sell. I don't necessarily know, but I think that we're more able to see our collective impact. And through some of the changes that we've made, I'll show you that multiplier effect here in a second. Okay, so in response, we have made quite a few changes. We split our work days up from one work day on the farm, which would have been 20-some people out there at once, into 2 work days. They wanted more individual attention, so we split it into 2 work days, and now we have 12 people to 15 people on each one of those days for our practicum. And I split them into 3 further groups, so people are getting a lot more individualized attention. We have integrated, or we applied for a South Carolina Department of Agriculture Specialty Crops grant, which the purpose of was to increase sales for specialty crops in the state of South Carolina. And so we are now integrating into that goal-setting process a project and giving them options for the apprentice to do some kind of project that will increase the sales of their farmer. So we said, you can come up with an enterprise budget for one crop, you can research the production of another crop, you can come up with a CSA management tool, you can come up with a ripe sheet for restaurants, you can do social media. So we have a list of options for them, and we're helping walk them through that process to somehow create a benefit to their mentor farmer beyond being an employee, and also beyond their experience there. So it's creating some kind of legacy that could live on after their experience. In response, we created mentor profiles because it became clear that we needed to be able to convey that information to potential apprenticeships. Changed the schedule. I mentioned earlier, we moved it back some. We also integrated new projects. We're doing a farmer's market stand now. We nixed our wholesale sales because our farm really isn't set up for wholesale, so we weren't really providing a realistic experience for them there. We also have, proposed our Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program grant, and we've increased the amount of rural outreach that we had and improved partnership with organizations that can help us to do that. The hope is that we can take the show on the road and do smaller, more condensed versions of what we do here in areas that we can't get people to travel to us from. So I think that this answers the question that just came in from Anne, which is, do you find people coming to your program from outside the area, or is it local interest? So we can take anyone from those 8 counties, but mostly it's local. And the reason being, over the past few years, is that getting transport here is very difficult. So I mentioned we're hoping to take the show on the road, and have worked together with Clemson Extension and Center for Heirs Property to offer programming, more condensed programming in rural areas. I also wanted to add, there's just a couple more slides here and a couple more minutes. We ask a lot of questions on the front end in our application. I'm looking at our application here and seeing some of the stuff we try to glean. We try to find out people's backgrounds, demographic information. We also have a couple of resources where we're able to identify if people are coming from, low, middle, upper income areas. We use there's a USDA website where you can find by typing in an address whether or not someone is rural or non-rural. And we also ask them information about their household income so we can determine based on their poverty levels each year the pool of participants that we have who has a need for financial aid and be able to disperse that. We give scholarships to 90% of the people who apply for them or indicate that they need them. We look at education background, we look at their previous industry. We have a huge number of people that are here from F&B, food and beverage that is, and then we look at where they've found out about us. And typically it's our website and word of mouth is the biggest area where they find out information about us. But just asking a lot of questions on the front end so that we can have that information throughout the year. Can I share my application? Sure thing. Last but not least, let's talk about that multiplier effect. So when we enter into these peripheral businesses, I have a bunch of slides of those businesses. So not just farmers. We work with Lowcountry Street Grocery. They're a mentor. They go into low-income neighborhoods and set up shop. And they basically work on a Robin Hood economy. So they go into affluent neighborhoods and they go into low-income neighborhoods and offer access to produce. They hired full-time 2 previous alumni and have a current mentee. Lowcountry Flower Growers Group was formed by a number of apprentices. It's an organization that's trying to do advocacy and education around the slow flower movement here, and it's 90% Growing New Farmers alumni. We work with Tiger Corner Farms. They do aeroponics production. So they have 3 companies, a software company, a manufacturing company, and then a farm. They're currently full-time employing one of our alumni, and then we have 2 apprentices with them this year. John's Island Farmers Market was started by an alumni, and she has taken on an apprentice in the past as well. Fields to Families is a gleaning organization, so they take product that farmers are going to throw away and get rid of and take it to food access points. They also are growing food for that as well, and they are a mentor. MUSC Urban Farm is the Medical University of South Carolina. They have an urban farm based downtown. They are a mentor as well. The Green Heart Project has a full-time employee who's running their garden program now, who is a mentor and starting his own nonprofit, but they install and implement schoolyard gardens and nutrition programming around that. So we have a lot of organizations that are on the periphery of feeding the food system, and that's just a few of them that not only are taking people on to work with them, but now employing people and helping to grow that network. And that's just the non-farming side of things. So we still have farmers that are full-time employing their apprentices from years past and growing their operations because of it. So I think there's 1 minute left. Are there any more questions? I am amazed that I made it through all my slides.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. As mentioned, we've got a little bit of time left here for any final questions that you want to send through. But I want to say a big thank you to Brian. This is hugely valuable and interesting information to hear this example from Lowcountry Local First and how your program's operating. I think it's really useful to other programs to kind of glean this information and see what might be applicable for their own operations. I don't see any questions coming through. Again, feel free to send anything through the chat box or the Q&A. But again, want to just remind everyone that this presentation recording will be sent out to everyone who registered or attended today, along with the presentation slides and a link to other new entry resources that might be applicable to you all. So that should come through early next week. And again, just want to do another quick plug for the Ag Apprenticeship Learning Network and the National Incubator Farm Training Initiative, 2 communities of practice that New Entry kind of facilitates for these kind of webinars and training opportunities to kind of keep the conversation going among beginning farmer training organizations to share these best practices and stories to help everyone along the way.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I appreciate it. And my contact's there. Anybody feel free to reach out later on if you have any further questions. Happy to be support and part of the network. NIFTY is a great resource for us all. So thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you again so much. All right, take care, everyone.